Please take your seats. The program is about to begin. Please silence all phones. Our program will now begin. Please welcome to the stage Mark Miller, Global Editor of Bloomberg Live.
Good morning, everyone. Good morning and welcome to Bloomberg House. I'm Mark Miller. I'm the Global Editor of Bloomberg Live, and we're very happy to have you here this morning. This is the beginning of our Breakfast at Bloomberg, our conversation series here at Bloomberg House, so welcome again. Some of you may know this, but visitors to our offices all around the world are welcomed by our famous pantry, so I hope you've had a chance to get coffee and something to eat and are making yourself comfortable. The most common question we get here at Bloomberg House is, what's the Wi-Fi? So you can find that information here behind me on the screens. And we're also, of course, active on social media, so we hope that you'll engage with us there. You can see the handles and hashtags on the screen. Follow the conversation with the hashtag Bloomberg House. If you're not already a Bloomberg.com subscriber, then you are missing out on one of the world's premium sources of essential news produced by, if I may say so myself, the world's best news team. So if you need some more persuading, and you don't believe me, you can try out a 3-month subscription for free using that QR code. So please check it out if you haven't already. We want to kick off this breakfast at Bloomberg House today with a session programmed by our colleagues at Bloomberg Media on technology and the future of the creative industry. This session is brought to you by Utopie Studios. That will be followed by a news interview with former Vice President Al Gore, who is speaking to Carlyle Group co-founder and co-chair, and my favorite Bloomberg TV host, David Rubenstein. So let's get started. Please enjoy this session on technology and the future of the creative industry. Thanks.
Please welcome to the stage Cecilia Shen, co-founder and CEO of Utopie Studios, and Maddie Staniszewski, co-founder and CEO of 11 Labs, for a conversation with Bloomberg's Ashish Verma.
Good morning and welcome. We're super excited to be opening up the programming for Bloomberg House today with this discussion, which is very near and dear to my heart, having been in the creative industry for about more than 25 years. We are at an inflection point in the media and entertainment industry with two forces coming together, media and entertainment and AI, right? And I think what that says to us is that the industry is changing, it's transforming. The recent headlines tell us so. But media and entertainment is not just about storytelling and being a cultural force, it is a global economic driver. The industry by itself is projected to be $3.5 trillion globally. So when we think about media and entertainment and the disruption, and we'll talk about how technology is doing that, it's a huge reason for us to be discussing that at Davos. So with that, when we think about AI and film production, UTPI Studios comes to the forefront. And similarly, when we talk about audio and voice transformation for both the creative industry and for enterprises, 11 Labs emerges as a leader. So with that, I wanted to start out with Cecilia and ask you a little bit about what UTPI Studios' vision is.
Yeah, well, 100%. Thanks for having me, and thanks for everybody to come to this breakfast. We believe a new era for media industry is really forming. There's new content formats because of AI, there's new user engagement, and there's new global distributions. And it drives new global opportunities there. So we're not only building the state-of-the-art technology for the industry, but also we're reshaping the entire global media landscape. In 2025, we built a strong production and technology pipeline over the world, and we became the lead revenue generator for the AI and film industry. And in 2026, we're continuously gonna push the technology boundary a step forward. We're also aiming to drive more market growth for IP and content and expand market shares and contribute to the global economy.
Mahdi, the question I have for you is 11 Labs' proposition is, and I want to get this right, is using an AI audio and agentic infrastructure to be able to transform industries, both media and entertainment and beyond. What does that mean?
Good morning, everyone, and thanks for having me. Thanks for having me here. I didn't realize this is the first session kicking it off, so the pressure is on. So to give you a little bit more context, so we are an AI research and product company transforming how we interact, how we interface with the technology around us. So what this means is when we started the company in 2022, we've built the first voice model with my brilliant co-founder, Piotr, that could speak human. It could understand the context of the text and produce emotions and intonation that finally sounded the same way that we speak. And then fast forward to today, over the last 4 years, we continued on that research journey, building across the entirety of the audio models, where we help create text-to-speech, so create and bring those emotions across, but also speech-to-text to understand speech around you, or build the orchestration of how those pieces come together. And then build two platforms on top of that research. One platform for creative industries, so helping all the way from individuals on YouTube to help them create voiceovers, anyone from Lex Friedman to some of the biggest creators, to voiceovers and localization with companies like Disney or Meta. So that's on the creative side. And on the agentic side, we help turn from what was a static experience into an interactive one. So this can mean a traditional enterprise like Deutsche Telekom working with us to create voice agents and customer service, but it can also mean company like Masterclass figuring out new ways of education, where now, instead of having just the course, you can also speak with some of the incredible talent. So you can be learning cooking while having Gordon Ramsay, AI Gordon Ramsay, teach you how to get better. Or you can have Chris Voss negotiate with you live so you can actually practice negotiation. So we are seeing that kind of shift across the industry on the creative side and the entertainment, where what was previously static can now be interactive with the help of voice agents, and that's what we are focused. And as a company today, we serve millions of creators to thousands of enterprises. We happily crossed the year at 330 million in revenue. Wow. But the happy coincidence is we just announced that on Bloomberg actually a couple of days ago, so it feels like homecoming.
Yeah, what I love also about that is the natural language speech and just the idea of a natural user interface makes the technology more accessible, which is great. But We're at Davos, where the world's elite, based on this audience, global business leaders, policymakers, are convening. Why do you think, Cecilia, it's important for us to be able to have this discussion around the future of media and entertainment here?
Well, I think that when we talk about the media and entertainment industry, we don't just talk about the industry itself, but also media and entertainment is bringing a lot of the impact to the global economy. So take one of the movies published in 2025 as an example called K-pop Demon Hunter. And I'm sure a lot of the kids actually watched it globally. And so it not only creates a significant amount of the viewerships globally, but also it itself actually creates more than $1 billion in just the IP derivatives. So then when we talk about the entire media and entertainment industry, we really have to consider the entire IP derivatives, licensing rights, and IP content is actually bringing also to the entire global society. So now, as of today, AI is creating a lot of the new emerging markets. And some of the markets include like AI animations and video podcastings. So for example, video podcasting, very interesting market. Podcasting itself is already a massive market. Like in 2025, I remember there's like over 584 million of the users actually listens to podcasts every year. And there's like more than 51% of the US populations really watches video podcast. So video is really becoming a driving force out there. And now, like, how do we really use AI to even push it a bit forward? It's really a meaningful market share from the traditional streaming, and it really reflects how users are changing behaviors when they really consume long form of the content or short form of the content. So I think that is something that's really meaningful, and it's a growing massive market. So just take this growing market economy itself, and plus all the IP derivatives that we just talked about. I think it's in the next 10 years, it's gonna be glamorous. And on the other side, over the past 100 years, whenever we talk about entertainment or like content or whatever it is, there's one thing that would never change, which is storytelling. So by human nature, we would always want to tell a good story, no matter what technology it is. So that's why we have Hollywood, and that's why we have like TikTok and all the content platforms. And I think that entire like storytelling market is just massive. So that itself, plus all the the content and all the growing content market, it's a huge, massive market that we have to really look into. And the next younger generations would really play with that. So that's why here we're at Davos. We have to really talk about the entertainment and content industry, and also all the impacts it's bringing to the world.
Yeah, I was timing in ourselves and seeing how long it's going to take us to bring up AI in the opening remarks in about 5 minutes, right? And we're going to hear a lot about it. The one thing I wanted to ask you is this term AI slop is coming up a lot, right? And this idea of content that's not up to par, not up to quality, that maybe, for lack of a better word, junk. What do you think about that, and how do you integrate that into your business and strategy?
Do you want to talk about that? Because I think this really relates to voice.
Sure, Maddie.
Actually.
Yeah, no,
100%. 100%. I think first I would echo what Cecilia said about the storytelling being such an important part of any part of the creation process.
Yeah.
But like when I think about AI slop, I think an entire end-to-end AI-generated content where the predominant goal is to generate views or clicks. So there's no human integration. You try to generate that and get as many views as possible. And personally, I'm not excited for that future. There's this great book, Fahrenheit 451, where they speak about effectively all the humans being fed that content at all times, where like AI slop is effectively that version of that. So a scary proposition. I believe in a version where you have, instead of kind of AI doing the work end to end, you have AI doing the work middle to middle. So you have us, storytellers, humans, part of the equation where you need to tell something that, whether it's your emotional story, something that's attached that actually makes you excited to listen to it, but that the tooling around you exists to make it easy and possible. Right. And as we think about building a creative platform, as UTPI thinks about building the platform, I think it's a lot about giving that and making that easy for the creators around you to harness that technology. So that's kind of the easier part, which I think is important for us as a company and where we optimize our energy, how we can build and get as high quality rather than as easy as possible.
Yeah.
And you need that element of craft to actually get through that tooling. The interesting part is when you start shifting from, you have the original content and then you start creating derivatives that might be personalized to your liking or might be localized to your language.
Yeah.
And here you do go through the automatic process of AI doing most of the work. I don't think that's slow because you still needed the original story to be told.
Yeah.
But it can be an incredible one too.
Right. And so you're really thinking about how that's integrated and that philosophy is integrated into your tools, both for voice and audio.
I think in general, like you can optimize for the both part of the equation. Do you try to give you tools to get as high quality, or do you give you tools to make it as easy? Of course, you need to balance a little bit of both. But in our case, like the first one takes precedence of like, how can I make it so you can create the highest quality audiobook you would like, the best voiceover for a movie, localize that movie to another language while still getting the voice across. Rather than how do I create 1,000 videos on a click that will potentially get to the audience and find the right viewer here and there.
Right.
And kind of the first one, I think, is the first key. Of course, like maybe a little bit more on the controversial side. Over time, I do think there will be pockets of entertainment which will be auto-generated.
Yeah.
But I think still, as I think about that future, the IP part will be critical, where you want to know the characters, you want to know the creator, you want to know the story, and then it's important. Or you want to attach to something personal that you're interested in.
Implicit in what you're saying, and Cecilia, I want to ask you this, is this disruption of the structure that exists within the creative and media and entertainment industry, and the structure of creatives and talent and just the overall value chain. What do you think about that structural shift that's happening as a result of this AI and film production in entertainment?
Well, yeah. Well, first of all, I 100% agree with what Mada just said, because like for us, we strictly prohibit the output of the usage of the output in the AI to really be used in like scams, right? Or some of the like some of the very bad consequences things.
Right.
And on the other side, we do believe that the core for everything is really storytellings and creators. So we really want to protect that, and really wanted to protect how humans are just telling stories and what is the ideas out there and what is the IP behind it. So we're really doing a lot like human in the loop to protect this entire process. And to answer to this question, we do see two changes right now happening in the worldwide, and especially in the creative and content industry. One change is really the entire global redistribution of the creative power. Yeah. And another change is the entire global redistribution of the globalized content. So, just talk about the globalized content, first of all. Hollywood is always the leading force for a lot of the movie pieces or entertainment content out there. But now, especially in 2025, that we've started to see a trend where there's a lot of like Korean and Japanese, like Asian content that's actually going to international, and that goes so viral. So we do believe that in the next 10 years, and because of the technology and everything and all the tools and agent, we do believe that there's going to be tens and hundreds of the billions of the Asian content. That's going to really contribute to the market growth, and especially global market growth. And on the other side, Europe, which I really love, and I think that Europe is having its great advantage anyways, because Europe is such a great historical place, like birthplace really for arts. So now with all the technology and everything, like Europe has this great chance to really build Hollywood movies, art house movies, and big productions and big films and etc. So that is the entire shift for the global reconstruction for the content. Yeah. And in terms of the global redistribution for the creative power, we do think that for professionals, especially for a lot of the directors, and now in the future they do have a chance to even create something even larger without any budget limitations. And now writers can become, big producers. And photographers can also become great producers. So there's not going to be a limitation for a job title anymore. There's going to be an era for one studio, one movie out there.
Right.
And on the other side, kids And all the, the general creators, they could also create a beautiful story out there and a beautiful entertainment piece out there. So, and they could really create, like contribute to the entire IP landscape. So we do think that, there's also going to be the era for like one person, one film very soon. And that is very exciting. And that is really the next chapter that we're looking to.
Yeah, so the creative power is really shifting in that regard. You brought up distribution, and I want to come back to the structural shifts with you too, Madi. But you brought up distribution and this idea of audience behavior changing, consuming content and information, entertainment in a variety of different ways. How are you thinking about that UTPI Studios' sort of strategy and distribution model in that regard?
Well, that's a good question. Well, so if we really look into the entire global content market, I think there's always a very clear pattern behind it, which is technology is really driving every single creative waves. So think about from sound to colors, then to digitals and CGIs and et cetera, and especially Toy Story back to 1995. And it drives more than 400 million of the box office and in global that time. That's the first time, proven that technology plus creativity together could really produce something amazing. And so if we talk about AI plus the creativity today, I think that if we really introduce AI properly to the creativity, we're really going to see a lot of the next level of the creativity, even next genres and next format. So, well, there's two aspects into that. One aspect is we will see the diversity of the content. There's going to be more quantity, more quality, and there's going to be more creators out there, whether the professional creators or the general creators. And they would create massive amount of the content. So this entire demand for the content industry and the global growth for the content industry is going to be huge. On the other side, IP for the past 100 years is always very hard to capture, and especially in Hollywood and in the entire content landscape, because it's subjective, it's unpredictable, and there's a lot of investment. So now, if we really take the IP life cycle much shorter because we have great technology really produce the IP much quicker, then we do have a great chance to build an entire empire of an IP landscape. So now, every single year, there's more than like 262 million of the hours of the videos uploading to the YouTube, and every day there's more than 34 million of the videos created by TikTok. And if we just take 0.01% of that and convert them into IP or franchises, that's going to be a massive growing market. And that's the way we really want to look into that. Act as the next, turn this entire or transform this entire IP game into an infinite game, so that there's more people could really produce that and contribute to the global economy.
Yeah. I love the phrase empire of IP landscape. What I wanted to ask you, Madi, is the same question around structural shifts that are recalibrating the balance of power between creators and talent and traditional models like the big studios. But I want to add another point in there as you answer that question, which is this responsibility that you have with using AI and this notion of ethical AI. So tell me about this balance of power shifting and how you're thinking about ethical AI within that context.
Yeah, as we think about the change that's coming, there's of course the model that existed today will shift, will be different. As we think about our role in that model, we want to disrupt some of the industry, but we want to do it together with the industry too. So we want to bring industry along on doing that. What it means concretely, as we think about some of the examples in our work, one of the pieces that you really need when you create a voice is a wide diversity of voices across styles, about gender, age, different accents, different dialects. And one thing that we've built at 11 Labs is effectively a marketplace where everybody can create their voice. You go through authentication flow to make sure it's your voice. You can share it, and then you can earn money as a result. So anybody here can create a voice too. But we now have a brewing community of over 10,000 voices that are part of that ecosystem that you can use for your projects. And that's an interesting model where both the voice talent, the creators, the creatives in the industry can actually benefit both creating easier with the diversity of what's possible, while still the community actually earns money on top of that. We paid, coincidentally, $11 million back over last year. So that's actually going in a good direction. Now we're thinking about how to take it a step further. We recently partnered with iconic voice of Sir Michael Caine to work and bring him into the fold, where he will work on specific projects too. Unlocking, of course, you can do it passively, but still you will accept the projects that you want to take place and take role. So that's kind of the first part. The second thing of how the dynamics change, which is very interesting, very quickly, I don't as frequently tell about some of the origin of 11 Labs, but a very crazy thing, I'm from Poland originally, my co-founder is from Poland, and there is a very particular thing in Poland that if you watch a foreign movie in Polish language, all the voices, whether it's a male or female voice or any character in a movie, get narrated with one single voice. So you have like one voice narrating the entire movie. And you would think this was the only thing that you grew up with. No, it still happens today for majority of the content. Of course, the future that we imagine is different. You will have original voices, original intonation, emotion coming across. And that's, of course, changing so much in how you are creating content, distributing content, how the rights will exist in that process, who controls those rights. Is an interesting question. And similarly, we spend a lot of time. And recently, we worked with another icon, Matthew McConaughey, on his newsletter, which he read in English. And then we brought it to Spanish, so you can enjoy Matthew's voice in Spanish. Wow. And it sounds incredible. And actually seeing that change is great. But to your point, across all of that, one of the key parts is that you want to always have the transparency, whether it's AI-generated content or not. So you want the provenance. Is it AI? How was it generated? And be able to trace it back. When across all of that project, our community relies on us making sure it's used in the right way. So moderation on both against fraud and scams, against abuse is critical. And free building tools to help others detect is it AI or not. Right. Especially now with a lot of the open source technology, helping the wider industry to adopt that is important. And if we do it right, hopefully all of us will be able to speak other languages and still have that authentication that this is your voice, your language. And maybe to finish this one off, there's of course a lot of the public and private sector. One of the incredible examples of that was working with Lex Friedman, a podcaster who was interviewing world leaders. And a good example was him speaking with Narendra Modi on the podcast, and we brought that all to English. And for the first time, you could hear for 3 hours the whole conversation in English and kind of experience that in a completely different way. And I'm sure across the next few days, we'll have conversations where not everybody speaks the same language, and how incredible it would if you could actually hear the same intonation, emotion as the original.
That's incredible. Cecilia, same question for you that I asked before about the ethical AI and how Utopi Studios thinks about that in your own model.
Well, I think I just wanted to add one more point to that, because I know that we're running out of the time. So I think that it is important for the AI to tell a truth, because now, if you don't really do any, so for example, like we're really telling the story of the born of the Mexico. So there could be different sides to the story there, and there could be biases to there. So then how do we really train a model and there's like properly human in the loop to make sure that the story is really telling the truth and is really recovering what's there in the history. So I do think that this is something that we really love to do because of our position in the entire content and media landscape. Now we really wanted to make sure that there's like always human in the loop when it comes to trainings and productions and et cetera, so that the AI is really telling what's going on there and what is really there without any biases. So that's something that I do definitely agree with Matti, and which is something we're doing too.
So with a minute left, I wanted to just ask you what the future vision is for Utopi.
Well, I think, first of all, video agent in the next 3 years is going to take off. And that is definitely what we're focusing on. On the other side, we wanted to build the best cinematic storytelling models for all the storytelling creators in the world. And I think the machine could understand human more better and better. So now, there's a lot of the complex steps in the filmmaking, and especially in the professional content creating, when you just use human language to really engage with it. And I think that AI could understand it properly, really well. and with accuracy, consistency, and great user experience there. And that is something that we're trying to do, to simplify the process as much as possible and to drive another growth out of it. Maddie?
Yeah, Marty, what's next for 11 Labs?
Last year was about solidifying ourselves as voice of technology. As you think about the next years and years ahead, it's transforming how we interact with that technology, bringing that on our terms so technology understands us in the way we want it to understand us. We think it will be an incredible shift where you'll break down language barriers, you'll be interacting with technology around us through voice, and we hope we can make this possible and happen for the brands, creators, and enterprises around the world.
Yeah. I think in general, we both wanted to make sure the technology is accessible and democratized to everyone and every creatives in this world.
Well, thank you for joining us. You both are on the precipice of really big transformation. So thank you for sharing your stories with us. Thank you for opening the programming, and great to talk to you.
Ashish, thank you.
Thank you so much.
Please welcome to the stage Al Gore, former Vice President of the United States and founder and chairman of the Climate Reality Project, for a conversation with David Rubenstein, co-founder and co-chair of the Carlyle Group, philanthropist and Bloomberg television host.
Which side do you want? Which side do you want me on? Okay, you want us to switch? These guys always rule the roost, don't they?
Well, thank you very much for getting up early and being here, and look forward to a good conversation. So we're very honored today to have a former Vice President of the United States and a former Nobel Peace Prize winner as well, former winner of the Academy Award, and you've won a lot of other awards as well. In fact, let me ask you about this. You've been Vice President of the United States. You've won the Nobel Peace Prize without lobbying for it.
Who would do that?
You won the Academy Award for your picture on the environment. You've been a senator, vice president, member of Congress. Why are you so driven at this point to worry about climate change? You've done so many things in your life. I mean, climate change is an important thing, but let some other people do it. Why are you so driven on this subject?
First of all, minor detail. I always give Davis Guggenheim credit for the Academy Award. He was the director. I have visiting rights to the Academy Award. But why am I so driven? Well, when I was very young, when I was a college student, first of all, I had no idea that climate was going to take over my life to the extent that it has. But I had in my last year in college a course under a man now recognized as one of the greatest climate scientists of all time, Roger Revelle. And he opened my eyes to the issue and educated me. And it was like a window opening onto the future. And everything that he said at the time has come true, unfortunately. He designed the first experiment to measure CO2 in the Earth's atmosphere. and David Keeling, a scientist who created what's called the Keeling curve. That's the bedrock of modern climate science. Anyway, I was first introduced to the issue back when I was very young, 20 years old. And later, when I got to the Congress, well, I kept in touch with Professor Revelle and stayed close to him. When I was elected to Congress, I started asking, what are we doing about what we call global warming then? And the answer was crickets, or nobody had really heard of it to any extent. I finally got permission to hold the first congressional hearing in the House on climate, and I invited my professor to be the lead-off witness, and I naively thought that his statement would create the same epiphany for my colleagues on the dais that a full college course had created for me. And that did not happen at all. And in the aftermath of that hearing, I first asked myself the question, how can I recreate the aha moment that I had and explain this in a way that takes this great scientist's message to others? Because it's so critical, David. And it's the kind of challenge where once you pick it up, you really can't put it down because it's such a threat. It has to be dealt with.
All right, let's assume that's true. Why do you think...
Do you have any doubt?
I have doubt that this problem is going to be resolved in my lifetime.
Well, that's a different question.
But let me ask you about this. Why do you think so many people in the world, we have 8 billion people on the face of the earth, why do you think so many people are going about their lives not worrying about this issue? And some people think that climate change is not man-made or not man-caused. Why do you think it is that people either don't blame humanity for it or they don't really think it's happening?
Well, I think there are a couple of sets of reasons. First of all, it's a complex issue, and it plays out in the global dimension over time spans that we're not geared to dealing with very easily. We respond immediately with alacrity to the kinds of threats that our ancient ancestors survived. But when we have to use our reasoning capacity, we can certainly do that, but it takes more time. And the second reason is, there's an old saying, I'm sure you've heard it, that if you see it's a Tennessee saying, if you see a turtle on top of a fence post, you can be pretty sure it didn't get there by itself. And the fossil fuel industry has spent many, many billions of dollars on an information strategy with falsehoods larded into it to try to convince people that it's not real.
Let me ask you a question that has been on my mind for many years. You ran for President of the United States in the year 2000, 25 years ago, quarter century ago. You lost by maybe, some people would say, 530 some votes in Florida, or you could say one vote in the Supreme Court, depending on how you look at it. Why did you not go complain about that or say, hey, the election's stolen? Thousands of voters in Broward County who were Jewish voted for Pat Buchanan, who was widely thought not to be, let's say, pro-Jewish. So you had a pretty good grounds for protesting it. Why did you ultimately just make a speech saying, look, the system goes forward, and I congratulate the winner, and I'm going about my business? Wasn't that hard to do?
Well, yes, but what I really did was what Winston Churchill said about the American people. They generally do the right thing after first exhausting every available alternative. Right. And I did exhaust every available alternative, save one that the outcome of which would have been certain. There's a provision in the Constitution. Don't you have an original copy of the Constitution, David?
I have some original copies.
Thank you, seriously. I'm not trying to butter you up, but you have done so much to safeguard the treasures of America's heritage. In any case, there is a very little known provision in the Constitution that if you get to a complete deadlock in the Electoral College, then it goes to the House of Representatives, and it's a strange mechanism where each state has one vote. The Republican Party completely dominated that election. So if the country had been dragged through that for 6 months or whatever without any outcome, and then the outcome, when it came, was a foregone conclusion, it seemed to me that that was the right decision to make.
Well, what was it like presiding at the Senate? You're opening the ballots, and you have to read that you lost. And that's not a pleasant experience, right?
Wasn't the most fun experience I've had, no.
So you came very close to winning in 2000, as close as anybody could come without winning. Why didn't you run in 2004? I mean, the incumbent wasn't that popular at the time. Did you ever consider running again?
I did. I thought that I might. When 9/11 happened, it changed things up quite a bit. And at that time, I began to get very involved in business activities and in climate advocacy. And I decided that it was best not to run another time. I ran twice. I ran 4 national campaigns, 2 for president, 2 for vice president, and that's a lot.
So when you were a young man, you decided to go to Harvard College, and your father was a United States Senator from Tennessee. You went to Harvard, and your roommate was?
Tommy Lee Jones.
And he was more famous at the time, I guess.
He was a great football player at the time and a great student actor, and we remain great friends to this day.
So after you graduated, most people in your generation, which was my generation, figured out, how can I not go into the Vietnam War, and how can I not go into the military? Obviously, some people did, and they deserve credit for it. But you enlisted. You volunteered. You didn't wait to be drafted. Why did you enlist? And didn't that cause a lot of concern on your family's part?
Certainly on my mother's part, yes. There were really 2 reasons why I made that.
Are you an only child?
No, I had one older sister. She died of lung cancer at the age of 48, July 11th, 1984. I was 38 at the time. She was my best friend and protector. In any case, I was raised in 2 places. My father was in the Congress, House, and Senate, so I spent a lot of time in D.C. as a child, but every summer and Christmas, and my spiritual home was in Carthage, Tennessee, and that's where my draft board was. And I couldn't imagine walking down the street and seeing a family whose son had died in Vietnam and them knowing that I had used some connections to get out of it. There was another factor I have to add that helped to clarify the issue for me, and that is my father was a leading opponent of the Vietnam War, and I was immensely proud of him. And his reelection was coming up, and getting out of Vietnam did not seem like the most honorable thing for me to do, and it didn't seem like the most beneficial thing for my dad either. So I decided that the right thing to do was to go ahead and volunteer. I went in as a private and went to Vietnam.
But it didn't help his election.
Well, you don't know the counterfactual. He could have lost by more.
Okay. So after you got out of military service, you went to divinity school. Were you thinking of being a preacher or something?
I was not. I was raised in a church-going family, but at the age of 21, I felt very strongly the moral dilemma of being opposed to the Vietnam War, marching in opposition to the Vietnam War, and then how could you go and be a part of it? I had my reasons, and I thought they were sound and valid, but I worried about it. When you're that young, you can build these things up in your mind, and I thought that coming back to the U.S. after the war, it would be healthy and good for me to have a structured environment where I could explore the ethical questions that I had focused on.
So you didn't complete divinity school. You went to journalism school for a while. And
No.
Oh, I thought you went to journalism school.
No, I went to, when I came back from Vietnam, I got a job, $95 a week, working as a cub reporter for the Nashville Tennessean. You may have known John Siegenthaler,
Yes.
the great editor who was my mentor. And then I went to divinity school at the same time. And as a journalist, I benefited a great deal from Siegenthaler's tutoring. I became an investigative journalist and got into corruption in local and state government.
There was corruption in local and state government.
It's hard to believe, I know, but even back then it occasionally appeared. Two councilmen I got indicted. One of them was convicted. The lawsuits, I was a witness in a couple of trials, and I saw, boy, this law thing, I need to know more about this. My parents were both lawyers, so there was that. But I decided to go to law school, continued to work at the newspaper, and I thought that I would maybe be Fred Graham. Do you remember Fred Graham? He was the
CBS.
Supreme Court reporter, first for the New York Times, then CBS. He was a kind of a role model for me in those days.
But you didn't complete law school.
No, because at the end of my second year, the congressional seat in my home district
Right.
came open. There was a surprise retirement, John Sigenthaler. I came home from law school to drop off my books and then go down to the paper to work at night.
Right.
And I got a call from Sigenthaler that Joe Evans was the congressman's name. He'd been there for 30 years. He's going to retire. And I packed up and just started running for Congress on the spur of the moment. I surprised myself in some ways.
As somebody who did finish law school, I can tell you didn't miss anything.
I always felt guilty about not finishing it.
Don't feel guilty about that. So you get elected to Congress, and then you take on an issue that people didn't understand what you were talking about then, something called the information superhighway. What was that, and did people make fun of you talking about that all the time?
No, they didn't. In my later political career, I suffered some attacks that were based on some misleading.
Because people said you invented the internet.
I never said that, but they successfully accused me of doing that. I'll tell you how that idea came about, David. When I was a student, I really focused intently on the interaction between government and the media, and our shift from the printing press through radio and television and onward was really something that I focused on a lot. When I was a very young boy, I had learned from my father, who was the author of the Interstate Highway Bill, that our problem after World War II, one of the problems, was we had these little two-lane roads, but after World War II, everybody bought cars and trucks, and we couldn't handle the traffic. And I went he took me with him to work, as some dads take their kids to work. I remember when they voted to make the interstate signs green. I remember when they voted on the width of the lanes. But what he described to me was a conflict between the expansion of the number of cars and trucks and the limitation of the infrastructure. What I later learned about computing was that the exponential increase in the processing of information was outpacing the twisted copper pairs of wires that were built for telephone communication. So what we needed was an information superhighway so that those working with computers in different locations could work together and communicate. We built a demonstration network, the National Research and Education Backbone Network. I passed legislation to put $1 billion a year into high-performance computing and the fiber optics. Corning was the only business that supported me in those days. They make the fiber and the algorithms for the switches, and I found it utterly fascinating.
All right, so you were a successful member of Congress. You then ran for the Senate. You got elected to the Senate. And then in 1988, you ran for president, and you didn't win.
I was 38 years old, and in some dictionaries, I'm told if you look up the word chutzpah, you'll see a picture of my announcement speech.
So 38 years old, you didn't get elected.
Come in third place on the Democratic side.
Not bad, but so you considered running again. Dukakis was the nominee. He lost fairly decisively to George Herbert Walker Bush. In '92, you thought about running again, and you decided not to. Why did you not run again? You were older and you had more experience. Why did you not run in '92?
In April of 1989, one of my children had a very, very serious accident.
Your son?
My son almost lost his life, and the recovery was quite lengthy, and the stress and strain on the family, of course,
He'd been in a car had hit him.
He was hit by a car. I went to your beloved Orioles in Baltimore, and after the game, I hate to tell you, I was rooting for the Red Sox in that game, but afterwards he was hit by a car. It was a devastating experience in so many ways. I was worried when I got to him that he had died. Everything turned out great. He's fantastic, and
he's an actor or
complete full recovery. No, he advocates for electric vehicles. He's head of a group called the Zero Emissions Transportation Association. It's the main group representing EV manufacturers, batteries, lithium miners, et cetera.
All right, so.
But anyway, when the '92 campaign approached, I was still, as a dad, in the midst of taking care of my family.
All right, so then Bill Clinton gets the nomination for president, and then he's a Southerner, obviously, and did you ever think he would pick another Southerner to be his vice presidential candidate, and did you think twice about ever becoming vice president when he asked you?
I never expected that he would pick me, no, because the tradition up until that time had been in both parties to balance the ticket geographically, ideologically, and so forth. And Bill and I were from neighboring states in the Upper South, on the same part of the ideological spectrum. We had advocated for a centrism approach at the Democratic Party. I never thought he would do it. But I was at the Earth Summit in Rio de Janeiro, chairing the Senate delegation on climate, when I got the call. And I still didn't think it was very serious, but we had a terrific set of conversations. And then did I think twice about accepting that invitation? I did, actually. But my conversations with Bill went so well that I'm glad that I did it.
All right, so you served as vice president for 8 years. Then you decided to run for president. And we talked about the fact you came as close as anybody can come without winning. And you decided not to run for president again. But you got immersed in the private sector, and you went on the board of Apple. What was your qualification to be on the board of Apple?
Well, good question. But I had become friends with Steve Jobs when he was at his first tour at Apple. And I was a young congressman one of the sponsors of legislation to ease his donation of computers to schools, and we became friends. And I had worked on networking issues and technology issues. When I became vice president, I got a commitment from President Clinton that I would handle technology and the environment, and he kept his word on that, and I was deeply involved with the computer industry.
So you also started an investment company.
Yeah.
And nothing could be more important than being an investor, right?
I learned from you.
Right. So you started an investment company, but it had the concept that you would invest only companies that did things that were good for society.
Right.
It's a very novel concept, and it actually worked out so far. Is that right?
Yeah, very much so. And I learned my secret to success in business is to get great partners. And David Blood, my co-founder, the old joke is, I've worn it out really, I wanted to name the firm Blood and Gore, but the other partners wouldn't agree to it. But when I first left the White House in January of 2001, involuntarily, I got an offer from another investment firm. And it's common, you went through this transition from the White House to the private sector yourself, and the salaries in the private sector are a little bigger than you get in public service. But I didn't really enjoy it. They were great people, but it was just about making money. And I hope that doesn't sound weird, but it didn't get my passions flowing. And I learned the business and decided I'd like to find a way to set it up in alignment with the principles I felt are so important. We don't invest in fossil fuels. I urge you not to do it too, by the way. But everybody else does.
I'll think about
it. Well, you'll think about it. I hope you will, because I hope we can come back to climate. It's way more serious than people realize. But in any case, at the end of that first gig in investing, I had been fortunate enough to go to work for Google right out of the White House, and that was a good move, as it turned out. And I went to try to set up my own investment firm, and that's when I met David Blood. He was retiring from Goldman Sachs, and we set up this firm 21 years ago.
And now it's had a higher rate of return than the S&P 500, I gather, over that period.
We've had a lot of success. The people who work with us are fantastic. And if you set it up in the way where we invest everything through a sustainability lens, that attracts the brightest and best people to come knock on your door and want to work with you. I have a terrific group that I work with.
So today, you're spending a fair amount of your time on your investment operation. You make a lot of speeches. You're also involved on the board of the World Economic Forum, where we are today in Davos. What propelled you to go on the board of the World Economic Forum?
Klaus Schwab, the former chairman and the founder of the WEF, the World Economic Forum, called me and asked me to join after I wrote a book called The Future 6 Drivers of Global Change. It turned out that Klaus Schwab was the target demographic for that, right, for that book. And he liked it a lot and called me and asked me to join the board.
When you were called and told you and a few others had won the Nobel Peace Prize, were you thinking it was a mistake or a joke, or because you hadn't been campaigning for it and it wasn't, climate change wasn't considered a peace prize kind of thing at the time. So were you surprised, or you kind of knew maybe it might happen?
Little of both. I was surprised, but in the days leading up to it, there had been some buzz about that possibility. So when the actual announcement came at 2 o'clock in the morning, I was waiting up to watch the news.
But you haven't given your Nobel Peace Prize to anybody else, right? You still haven't.
I hadn't even thought of doing that, actually, but.
Okay, so today you are really an advocate for climate change and that people should pay more attention to it. What do you think people can realistically do to do more about climate change than we're doing? And if you might talk about the Paris Accords, because under the Paris Accords, as I understand it, when it was set up, that the goal was to get the temperature, the Celsius temperature, not to go up by the year 2100 by more than, let's say, 1.4 degrees. And now we're on track to go to 2 or 2.5 degrees Celsius. So in other words, by 2100, if we did nothing, the theory was you'd go to 4 degrees higher, 4 degrees Celsius higher, and that would be catastrophic. How close are we going to get to the original goal of, let's say, 1.2, 1.3, 1.4?
We can overshoot and then come back down. If we stop adding more heat-trapping pollution to the atmosphere and stabilize at what they call net zero, the temperature will stop going up immediately. It's a thermostatic system. And the thermostat is not a round knob on the wall. It's the set of policies that currently include massive subsidies for fossil fuels. If we didn't subsidize fossil fuels and force the taxpayers to subsidize them, they would be gone pretty quickly.
If fossil fuels had not been discovered on the face of the earth, there had been no oil and gas, do you think civilization would be further ahead of where it is, or we'd be behind because fossil fuels have enabled us to do many things we otherwise couldn't do?
Yeah, no question about it. And we owe the men and women in the fossil fuel industry for helping create this civilization that we enjoy today. And they did not know until 50 years ago, at least, that the byproduct, this heat-trapping pollution, was going to cause such problems. And just to pause on this for a moment, David, yesterday, 300,000 people were forced from their homes in Mozambique. 50,000 people 2 days ago were forced from their homes by these massive downpours in South Africa. 3 days ago in Chile, massive fires connected to the climate crisis. Last year in the U.S., we had 12 once-in-a-thousand-year downpours in the space of 3 days. We had the Los Angeles fires. In my home state of Tennessee, and even more so in neighboring North Carolina, the downpour associated with that massive Hurricane Helene, we got more rain in 4 days than falls over the largest waterfall in the world in 2.5 years. And it's getting steadily worse. Beyond that, there are very tiny areas in the world today that are physiologically unlivable. In the Sahara Desert, a few places around the Persian Gulf, the combination of heat and humidity makes it impossible for people to live for more than 4 or 5 hours outdoors. Those areas are now beginning to expand dramatically. And the World Health Organization's Climate Committee says that by 2050, we could have 1 to 2 billion climate migrants crossing international borders. A few million coming from the Eastern Mediterranean with the climate drought there led to Viktor Orban and Brexit and authoritarian friendly governments that have emerged. It's hard to imagine what 1 billion climate migrants would do to our capacity for self-governance. And we're in danger of crossing some so-called negative tipping points, like the shutting down of the Gulf Stream. Sounds like a science fiction movie, and it was, but it's now a very real threat, and there are others. So we are now trapping as much heat with this pollution every day as would be released by 750,000 Hiroshima-class atomic bombs exploding every 24 hours. That's insane for us to allow that to continue.
But is there anything that humans today can do
Yes.
that will change the lives of the humans currently on the Earth? In other words,
Yeah.
things that you do now might affect my great-grandchildren, might be able to help them, but today, why should I do something that I'm not going to see the benefit of?
Yeah. Well, first of all, people who switch over are getting the benefit right away. But coming back to the point about the fossil fuel industry and our debt to them, there's an old saying that came from the king of Saudi Arabia years ago. The Stone Age didn't end because of a shortage of stones. It ended because something better came along. Something better has come along now to replace fossil fuels, which are dirty and polluting and threatening humanity's future. The cheapest electricity in the history of the world is solar energy. Second cheapest is wind energy. And now batteries, the only thing that's come down in price faster than solar is utility scale batteries, doubling every single.
Why are we ending the wind farms that are now being built off the coast of the United States? We're ending them.
Because Trump is insane.
On another subject.
You don't want to explore that, but let me add one point on the solar. If I asked you, it's not a trick question, but if you look at all of the new electricity generation installed worldwide last year, I often ask people what percentage of it was renewable, and people say, you know, they're looking for a high number, say maybe 30%, 35%. Correct answer is 93%. Because it is taking over the electricity generation industry. EVs, from a standing start to 2 decades ago, 1/4 of all the new cars sold this year, last year, were EVs. 60% last month in China.
You drive an EV?
Pardon? I do, yes.
Okay. What do you do? You're a very serious person. You've done all these great things in your life. What do you do to relax? I mean, can't you just say, look, I've been vice president, I've won the Nobel Peace Prize, I've won an Academy Award, I've done all these things. I'm just going to take some time off and relax. Do you ever relax or you just chill out?
I'm relaxing right now, Dave.
Really? Okay. All right, but you have grandchildren.
But yeah, yes, I do enjoy a lot of.
What do you like to do when you're relaxed? I see you have cowboy boots on. Are you? You're not from Texas. How come you have cowboy boots?
Well, these came from my brother-in-law 40 years ago, and they're so molded to my feet. They're the most comfortable shoes I have. But
you don't take them off at night, or they're just really?
Oh, I thought about sleeping in them, but probably don't. You asked about grandchildren.
Yes,
Very proud to
grandchildren?
have 10 grandchildren.
10?
Yeah.
Can you remember all their names?
Of course. Of course.
And how do you remember their birthdays? You must have a.
I do pretty good on that.
Really?
Yeah. Absolutely.
Any of them want to run for office?
Well, I don't think so. I think some of them would be great candidates if they chose to. I don't think they were really drawn to that.
All right. So, in this long and very impressive career, what would you say you're most proud of having achieved in your life? What would you say to your 10 grandchildren? This is what your grandfather did that you should be proud of.
Well, helping raise my 4 kids and helping them raise my 10 grandchildren is what I would be most proud of. In terms of my professional activities and political activities, I've devoted a lot of time to trying to raise awareness of why we have to solve the climate crisis. And we do have to do it. We really don't have any choice about this. I look back on the work that I was privileged to be able to do with President Reagan on nuclear arms control when I was in the House and in the first years in the Senate. I look back at the Reinventing Government program and the work on computer networking also.
Very impressive career. Thank you very much for being here, and good luck on everything you're doing on climate change. Okay?
Thank you, David.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay.
Please welcome to the stage Mark Miller, Global Editor of Bloomberg Live. Please welcome to the stage the Honourable Anita Anand, Canada's Minister of Foreign Affairs, for a conversation with Bloomberg's Lisa Abramowitz.
All right. If everyone could take their seats. Hello, welcome. My name is Lisa Abramowitz. I am co-host of Bloomberg Surveillance on Bloomberg Television in the mornings from 6 a.m. to 9 a.m. local in New York. I am here with a very important interview, so I would appreciate it to get started. We have the Foreign Minister of Canada with us, Anita Anand, who has been in Parliament for a long time. She has been in Canada's government for a long time. And she is coming to Davos for the first time, I believe, at a pretty interesting moment geopolitically. I would like to start by asking you what the mood has been like in the run-up to this meeting as you have conversations with your counterparts around the world.
So it is nonstop in terms of issues that confront us, new issues that confront us every single day. Whether it is our NATO allies, and I'm sure we'll get to discussing Arctic security and Arctic sovereignty, whether it is the Indo-Pacific region. We're just back from China, for example, striking a landmark set of agreements with China for Canada. Whether it is in the Northern Hemisphere generally or the Americas, we are daily confronted with numerous challenges, and Canada's charting its own course, diversifying trade relations, making sure we double non-U.S. trade over the next 10 years, and ensuring that we stand foursquare behind our NATO allies.
So let's talk about that trip to China and Qatar. You've been on the road for about a week. In China, on Friday, Prime Minister Mark Carney came out with this statement. He said that the world has changed and that the progress made with China on the behalf of Canada sets Canada up well for the New World Order. What did he mean by New World Order?
So if I could just take that question in two parts. The first is, what did we do with China? What occasioned the Prime Minister to make a statement like that? And first and foremost, we have begun a new era of relations with China. We struck a deal which reduces tariffs on canola and seafood products, and we made sure that we're on a track for a strategic partnership covering numerous areas, including clean and conventional energy, including trade and economic relations, including safety and security, and multilateralism. So the work that we are doing bilaterally and multilaterally with China is in a new era. At the same time, Prime Minister Carney was referring to the complete rewiring and volatility that is underpinning the trade relationships and the WTO among countries. And he was clear to say, as we believe, that we have not reached that new world order. It is not defined at this moment. We are in a process of volatility where we see a reordering of international relationships and a pragmatic approach to global conflict. We see that in terms of Ukraine with the coalition of the willing and security guarantees as a prime example.
So how much is this the rest of the world moving away from the United States?
This is, as I said, a pragmatic approach to international relationships, that it is one and the same time self-interested. That is why Canada is diversifying its trade relationships. We need to ensure that we bolster and grow the domestic economy. At the same time, we will not retreat from our multilateral relationships. Canada stands for certain values, the upholding of international law, the assurance that multilaterally we are cooperative and collaborative, and at the same time pursuing the ever important growth of the domestic economy in areas where Canada's a superpower, energy being the prime example.
The deal with China included reducing tariffs on electric vehicles coming into Canada from China, and China reducing tariffs on agricultural goods going to China from Canada. How far do you expect this alliance to go? Is there more to come with respect to tariffs being pared back, closer alliances commercially?
Well, as I said, this is a new era in Canada-China relations. And what that means is that there will be growth and advancement in the relationship as we continue to pursue the strategic partnership, the new strategic partnership, I should add, that Prime Minister Carney and President Xi agreed to just a few days ago. What that means is that you are going to see continued symbiosis across issues, especially in the economic area. But let me take it back to energy. Canada is an energy superpower in both clean and conventional energy. The first shipment of LNG left Canada's west coast of British Columbia just last summer. And everywhere I go, countries are asking, how can we have more of Canada?
So much of discussions here at Davos this year have been concerning Greenland. That was not my bingo card coming into this. I'm just wondering, from your perspective, how much that sucked the oxygen out of the room for issues like Ukraine, for other types of geopolitical discussions?
Well, I was the Minister of National Defense between 2021 and 2023 in Canada. And at that time, the Arctic, and indeed Arctic security and sovereignty, was very much on our radar, and it continues to be the case with the Russian illegal invasion of Ukraine, for example, and Russian infrastructure moving further and further north. We, as an Arctic country, 70% of our coastline is interfacing with the Arctic, 40% of our territory. We have no choice but to ensure that we are bolstering our Arctic presence. We are doubling indeed our troop work and deployment nationally and internationally. We're going to make sure that we increase our defense spending to 5% of GDP, as NATO allies are doing. This is our promise. $80 billion was in our last budget for defense spending.
Are troops from NATO going to Greenland and going to Arctic regions in order to protect against possible incursions from China and from Russia or from the United States?
So the question of troops in Greenland seems to be so prevalent. Let me just say, NATO allies routinely do exercises, military exercises together. That's a fact. The point that I've been raising with Mark Rutte, the Secretary General of NATO, is historically NATO's gaze has been eastward, on the eastern flank. Canada's largest military operation is Operation Reassurance in Latvia, for example. But what I've been saying to Mark Rutte, including before the attention has been focused on Greenland, is that NATO is the North Atlantic Treaty Organization. NATO needs to have a northern and western focus. This is clear. It is one of the primary reasons that NATO was founded, in my view. Canada is a founding member of NATO, and we deeply encourage a greater focus on the Arctic. And finally, I'll say, I'm headed to Greenland, a trip that was planned long before the past couple of weeks' events took place. I'll be going with my Danish and, of course, Greenlandic counterparts to open formally the Canadian consulate there during the first week of February.
Are we watching the NATO alliance collapse?
Not at all. What we are watching is the focus on geographical areas that demand attention by the strongest military alliance in the world. Canada will continue to remain at the table. We are a multilateral believer. We believe in the strength of working cooperatively and collaboratively with our allies, including at NATO and other multilateral organizations. That won't change, but we're also pragmatic. And so we come to the table in order to lead, in order to ensure that the rules-based international order, although it is shifting, is extremely important for global stability.
Are you concerned that the sovereignty of Canada is being threatened by the potential threat on Greenland's sovereignty?
Canada will never be the 51st state. We will always ensure that we stand foursquare behind our NATO allies.
Is this something that would cause you to increase your defense spending further beyond 5%?
Look, we have, as I said, put down a commitment for $80 billion in defense spending, increasing our defense spending to 5% by 2035. That is a more than solid commitment and insurance that military spending in service of the protection and defense of Canada and our multilateral alliances is extremely solid.
How much of your time this Davos and just beforehand are you spending with European counterparts asking for advice on how to handle the United States?
That's an interesting question, actually. I have been on the phone in very wee hours of the morning with several of my foreign minister colleagues to discuss these types of questions. But rest assured, the focus is not only on domestic stability from the perspective of each country that I'm speaking with, but also on how we can work together. The strength of collaboration is underestimated.
Do you think that the U.S. and Canada can ever repair the relationship over time that has been pretty severely influenced over the past year?
Canada and the United States share the longest undefended border in the world, and we have had hundreds of years of cooperation and collaboration. Every relationship has its challenges, but let me say that with $300 billion of goods and services passing through the Canada-US border every day, we will always remain friends.
Just real quick, I know you have to run to a meeting. I want to ask you, the big elephant in the room is Wednesday's speech by President Donald Trump. What are you expecting to hear?
Well, my focus as the Foreign Minister of Canada is on Prime Minister Carney's speech, and so I'm really looking forward to that. And I will also say that we have indeed eyes on what leaders around the world are saying. Again, let's bring this back to Canadian values. We're doubling non-US trade in the next 10 years. We're diversifying our trading partners, China, India. We just agreed to comprehensive economic partnership agreement negotiations with India when we were at the G20, Indonesia, Mexico, South American countries, including Ecuador, whom I believe is at Davos. Listen, the work is intense, but Canada will continue to stand for Canada's interests, and that is in terms of economic success as well as the defense and security of our country.
Minister Anand, thank you so much for taking the time today, the Foreign Minister of Canada. Thank you. That was great. Thank you. That was really good.
Please welcome to the stage Mark Miller, Global Editor of Bloomberg Live.
Thank you all. Thank you to the Foreign Minister and to former Vice President Al Gore and Lisa and David, my colleagues, for those great conversations. So for those of you online, we'll see you back here in a few hours for the year ahead program that we have planned for you, which is a clear-eyed forecast from AI's front lines. Our boss, John Micklethwaite, the editor-in-chief, will be interviewing Anthropic CEO and co-founder Dario Amodei, and my colleague Emily Chang will be interviewing Meredith Whitaker, the president of Signal. So be sure and come back in a few hours online for that. Thank you very much.